How's everyone doing today? Good? Yeah. All right. I figured the best way to break the ice would be to take a selfie with everyone in here. So let's see if we could get everyone to say ancient or CPAC. There you go. Oh, I didn't get my face. Hold on. CPAC. All right. So that'll go on Facebook, and I'll try and tag all of you in it. Just kidding. So today I'm going to be talking about we've been talking about different cycles of time, and you guys have heard awesome things about the different cycles of time. I'm going to be talking about the golden age of India. I'm going to be explaining to you from a cycle of time perspective as well. So here's the universe as we think we know it. 13 billion years old. Is that really true? Well, we don't think so. That's just as far as our scientific devices can measure externally. Right? That's what we say is like, oh, well, universe is about 13.7 billion years old because that's what this thing tells us. Much more evidence is starting to come about now that's showing us it's much bigger and much older than we think. The ancient Hindus, thousands of years ago, had calculated the universe to be over 13 trillion years old, and it's in a cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again. Many other ancient cultures also speak of the universe being very old, but we're talking trillions of years here. And that's what makes these ancient Hindu texts so peculiar, is that they have such exact and precise measurements according to where the stars are and the cycles of time, and everything is very scientific, down to almost perfect, within a margin of error of 5%. This is all from thousands of years ago. So how did they do all this? What were they up to? This is a particular one of the cycles of a yuga. They call it the life of Brahma, which is basically 311.04 trillion years old. And that's the cycle that we go on. One's a waking state and one's a sleeping state. And then it breaks down into the kalpa, which is billions of years old. Then we have the manvanatra, which is the 306 million years old. And then within that we have a different yuga, which is broken out, which is the one that we consider the great year. But beyond the great year, there's even more, right? We think about the precession. We know about the precession. We know it's 25,000 years, somewhere in that range. If you keep adding those up and go higher and higher and higher, we're talking trillions of years old. And this was written thousands of years ago. This isn't just recently. This was from what they think about 4,000 to 5,000 BC that they wrote this information down. Here's a typical cycle. We have the golden age here, and then you probably have seen this before. It's on the cover of the CPAC, I think, flyer here, or the program. And we see that it's descending night, and then we have the ascending day cycles. And right now, we're kind of down here. We're in the Kali Yuga, they call it, which is the dark age. So that's why, we see this descending night cycle here. And this is all zodiac. It's all predictable. It's all measurable in the sky. So here's just a quick, I just added some numbers up here, which are just estimates. You can see that this is what they were predicting thousands of years ago. Again, the great years around 25,000. This is 24. And you can see that all of these years are what they've actually kept. Again, we're right around here. Here's an easier way to look at it too, is that we're just kind of on this cycle here. We had this descending cycle. We have the Kali Yuga, and we're kind of coming out of it, so we're actually on this ascending cycle. So that's why we're seeing more and more information coming out. We're seeing people are starting to wake up and become enlightened and want to know the purpose of life and why they want to do certain things they do. It's because the intelligence and the solar system is actually moving into the ascending, the golden age. It's going back up towards the golden age. You can see 2013, 2012, we're still kind of in the dark age, but we're headed back up. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. We have thousands and thousands of years as a part of this one cycle. But it's cool that we're headed back up, right? I have astronomical-based texts. I put astrological, and then I put astronomical. It's a little confusing there, but everything in the ancient Hindu text that was written in Sanskrit basically has a reference to the skies at the time that something was happening at the time. That's the only way that they could actually track what was happening in the civilization, or track certain scientific findings that they would find, or teachings that they would want to give to their next generation. It always told a story, which is pretty cool. It would tell the story of what's going on and what's happening here and here during these astrological movements. So that makes me wonder, and makes us wonder, the stories of humans and gods that were powerful, sometimes not even human, right? There's monkey gods, there's elephant gods in the Hindu and Vedic cultures. There's multi-armed beings and supernatural, superhuman type beings in these cultures. Now, you think, is this all mythological? Is this all just made up? Are these just stories? Or was there any really proof to this? Are there real life events that actually can prove that there was an advanced civilization, not just of humans, but other types of creatures? Was it a representation, maybe, just of higher intelligence? Was it a representation of just the order of the universe, like we showed you on the yugas? Was it some kind of code that they encrypted for us to try and figure out? Well, it's kind of all three, and we're going to be digging into that. One of the big cities in India that they talk about in a lot of the ancient texts is called Dwarka. Now, not many of you may have heard of it. Maybe some of you have. Can I see how many of you have heard of it? Okay, so a decent, fair amount. Dwarka is off the west coast of India, and it was considered an ancient kingdom that was made of gold, kind of like Atlantis. Pretty weird, right? And it had all this futuristic technology and advanced civilization that could communicate telepathically, and everyone lived in harmony. Did such a place really exist? Did such a place really exist if they were mentioned in these ancient texts that I talked about that have everything tracked in the sky? From the Puranas to the Mahabharata to the Bhagavad Gita to the Upanishads. These are all ancient texts of India that have astronomical alignments of what is happening in the sky while things are happening on Earth. It's pretty cool. It's one of the oldest ancient texts. These are some of the oldest ancient texts that we have on Earth. As Walter was mentioning, and as Craig Marshall was mentioning, Vedic texts are some of the oldest texts that we can actually decipher. So, there's mentions of an ancient war that took place in Dwarka, in which over 4 million soldiers were said to have died in just a short amount of time frame. We're talking like 7 to 11 days. How did that happen? They talk about a war. I'm going to be getting into details of this. Was any of that even real? Again, these are in books, and I'm sitting there reading it, and I'm like, my mom would tell me these stories growing up, and I'm like, nah, whatever. It's fun. Like I said, were they just stories of ancient India and the mythological, representation of India and tapping into your chakras and, new agey kind of weird stuff, right? Well, I'm going to be getting into that. It's really cool. Growing up, I always thought of these stories as mythology, as stories that were just made for us to live a better life, philosophical theories, scientific stuff that was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. At some point, you're just like telling my mom, like, okay, stop, I get it. I'll be a good kid. But as I started studying more and more and more, this turned into like an obsession of mine because things were just too precise. There was astrological mappings, there was ancient texts, there was archaeological finds that they were finding that correlate with the texts, that correlate with the stars. And there's the Hindu verbal traditions that have been passed down for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They all match up. All these stories start matching up now. And they were using very precise explanations, and they were using advanced mathematics in all of these ancient texts. So when you think that something isn't real, but they're like, no, but that was up there, and this was down here, and it's 1.38, and this. How is that even possible? They must be telling some kind of truth in there. So I realized I had to dig more, that there's something even deeper at the bottom of all this. So it became an obsession. As was mentioned by Craig, time is a perception of our sun, the sun going up and down, and now we have clocks and watches and things that screw up our reality of what time really is. We think it's going this way, but as we saw earlier, it goes like this. It's cyclical, right? There are cycles within us on the atomic level. Atom moves around, goes like this, and there's cycles happening beyond us that we're not even capable of understanding, like the solar rotations and geocentric versus heliocentric, and understanding that this sun is actually moving through space, and some of that is really mind-boggling when you start getting down to the details of what's happening beyond us. And they continue to rotate like clockwork. just like that. They don't stop, they keep going. So it's really confusing because time is only a perception of us. It's only what we're looking at it as. This picture is kind of confusing. That's kind of what time is. It's confusing. You can't really tell. Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it what's going on? We've attached ourselves to this linear thing that we call time, right? We're scared that one day time is going to end, but in reality it carries on forever and ever and ever. So if we change our mindset just for a second and we realize that time is cyclical, then a lot of what we think is happening beyond us and inside of us has to shift. It has to. That something goes on beyond me. So we realize that we're just a part of this greater cycle of time, right? If in fact these texts were real stories, and it's proven that these civilizations just repeat themselves over and over again, well, is there a way that we can predict what's next and what's coming? If this is going over and over again like this, is there a way to tell what's going to happen 2,000 years from now? Probably. If the universe is trillions of years old and time is cyclical and keeps repeating itself, then there has to be a way to predict it. And if that's the case, then there's a way to make what we want happen.